Recently, President Muhammadu Buhari sent a message to the Federal House of Representatives requesting for an amendment of the Petroleum Industrial Act. On this week's episode of Labour Lens, we'll be focusing on the Petroleum Industrial Act and how it affects workers in the oil and gas sector. We will be right back. NECA Network of Entrepreneurial Women, known as a management organization with the vision of building generation of successful women entrepreneurs, is set to hold its yearly summit, tagged Commitment to Excellence. President of New Fumilayo Arowogun, at a briefing at NECA House Ikeja, said the event was to equip women with the right information that will prepare and empower them to take specific steps towards planning their future.
Youths of the streets, you know what we will do with them? We will train them. We will train them on skills acquisition. We will equip them by giving them startup grants for them to be established. Then when we do that, we would not leave them alone. We have a mentorship program for a year to ensure they are well-rooted. And so that is another program we have in New. And recently, we launched our tech hub. As we know, this is the new normal. All businesses must be online.
We're encouraging every member to come and attend. Don't just come, invite your friend. Bring a friend to come and learn. Don't be selfish. Let others join us. And those who are listening to us too should register. It's very cheap. We have online registration. You can join us online, and you can decide to come physically.
It was concluded that women have to be resilient when doing business and adapt to change quickly. The Women in Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria Lagos Zone engaged in giving back to the society through a back-to-school programs. The women who are working in the oil and gas industry are members of Pengasan, donated educational materials and school uniforms to pupils of Lagos Mainland Primary School, Ebute Metta, and RCM Primary School, Awoyaya in Ibeju, Lekki, Lagos. According to the Lagos Zone chairperson, the role of education in developing countries is a very important one, as lack of education causes poverty and slow economic development of a country.
I am calling on every corporate organization to please give back to the society. We term this project Women in Pengasan Lagos Zone Touching Lives, Restoring Hope campaign. We want to restore hope in our children, to know that there is still goodness in man. There is still goodness in society. To believe that Nigeria is not all bad. Nigeria is our country, and Nigeria will be better. This is just a phase we are passing through, but we must all work together to bring out that change with demand.
So many positive sides, and one of it is what our Women in Pengasan Lagos Zone have demonstrated today. It's part of our strategy of engaging critical stakeholders that the quest of building a greater Nigeria is a collective force that requires both the stakeholders, the industry practitioners, and what I would call the gatekeepers. And all of us, especially men of the third realm, which is the journalists, that we must be able to preach the Nigerian gospel, that Nigeria is a great country, a peaceful arena where the citizens can flourish without partaking on any negative things that would drag our corporate image backward.
I share in the anxiety of the workers of these agencies, the old workers, and because recently the management of these agencies were changed. So I understand their fears, their insecurities, and I share it as well. Nigeria is a peculiar country where we really have no assurances even when it is documented and it concerns government. But then I have faith in the strong unions that these agencies also have. I'm more than confident in what the union can achieve. I've seen their antecedents in the past about what they can achieve and how they can influence government to protect the interest of their members. So I have the faith that, like the Minister for State for Petroleum said, that their jobs are secure. not just because he said it, but because I know they have a strong union. Some other agencies don't enjoy that, but I know they enjoy that, and at least, even if not all, a large percentage of them have their job secure. Then also, I would rather that some of the things that would usually drag them to strikes were covered now in these negotiations that they're having with governments, about their welfare and the security of their jobs.
Of unbundling and saying that we are going to collapse this sector, the DPR, the PPRA, and the likes. The faith of the worker, well, it's quite simple. The federal government already made declaration that they are not going to sack anyone. Well, that's a good word always from an employer of labor. But the reality is, how can we sustain that position, considering the fact that the people that will be retained, are you going to engage them, productively, or they will be redundant, not doing anything, and you expect the bottom line to go? Well, I want to believe that if the federal government is telling us at this point that they will not sack, we want to look how they will manage the personnel cost. But it takes us back to some of the things we do say anytime you are in the paid employment, either with the government or the private sector. How creative can we be to go into entrepreneurship? Whether you like it or not, you serve the government at a particular time in your life. You retire. What becomes of you after retirement? So it's like you are being retired before time. If that happened, what are the work plan? Come to think about it, the sector we're talking about is like the sector that is actually being empowered with so much funds. How much of it have we diversified some of the earnings to create work opportunity? But the advice I want to give to the workers is that irrespective of what the decision is, let's plan for the raining day. We know the challenges we faced with people that have actually worked, not being able to get their pension. Most organizations these days are not even paying those pensions. They make it, they don't pay gratuity that they used to do those days. They just, you fall back on your pension because they feel that they cannot accommodate some of those things. It's always good when you are in service to prepare for the raining day, just like what we are faced with. It's just a temporary thing. If government is giving that word, I want to believe that it's something that we just be there on a short term. It's not going to be sustained, because if you don't bring anything on the table to contribute to the bottom line, to increase it, definitely there is no how you want to take anything out of it.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, I will be speaking with the Deputy Majority Leader of the Federal House of Representatives, Comrade Honorable Peter Akpatasin. It tells me about the conscious efforts the Federal House of Representatives is making to ensure that workers in the oil and gas sector would not be affected negatively with this development. It's good to have you on the program.
My pleasure once again.
Been a while from our last conversation. And of course, a lot of things have happened in the sector which you represent, and it's obvious that we actually have to have another chat. Looking at the PIA Act, a lot of things have actually happened before now. I know that it was a struggle, a tussle and bustle for us to get to the point whereby the presidency assented to the bill, which is now an act. The update now is that the presidency has actually written to the Assembly, to the House, stating that it wants an amendment in some section of the Act. So can you bring us up to speed? How would you react to this as one of the concerned party?
Well, in the first place, I thank God that eventually we got the PIB, passed in both houses, and after the conference, it was delivered to the presidency, and graciously, Mr. President assented to it. One would be wrong to say it's a perfect document, but certainly, it has moved us from where we were to where we are, which is, far better place than where we were in the past. We were in such a situation in the past where a lot of investors got, uninterested in investing in Nigeria, and so we were losing a lot of investment opportunity because of the uncertainty about the legislative framework for managing the oil and gas industry. just now having passed the bill, and now it has become a functional, act of the parliament, the people are more confident about investing in Nigeria, and so we're expecting that any moment from now we'll be seeing robust, activities in the oil and gas industry, which will also help to increase government earnings from oil and gas, which is the major source of revenue to the government and major source of foreign exchange earning. So it's a good thing for Nigeria. Yeah. However, many people want to say, why so soon? Why is Mr. President, initiating, amendments so soon? I had a conversation with some guys after the passage, and they challenged us about the poor performance of what they call the poor performance of legislators from the South, particularly South where I come from. And I told them to pardon us because I can't beat my chest to say we actually did very well. They should pardon us for not being able to meet the expectation of people from our region, particularly with respect to the host community figure relative to the exploration of frontier percentage. After that, I assured them that very soon they should expect us to initiate a review of that bill, the act now, no matter how new, because it is not constitution that requires the whole of those formalities and all of that. As an act of the parliament is at liberty to initiate, a review at any point in time. Similarly, the presidency or the executive also at liberty to initiate such review. So what the president did is quite in order. It may look like an oversight on the part of, the initiators of the bill, and those of us who considered it without actually looking at the part of it that Mr. President has, figured out. The desire is actually to make the oil and gas industry more businesslike, and that requires ridding it of any form of bureaucratic bottlenecks. Now, if you set up a new NNPC or new company, and you make minister a member of the board or chair of the board or whatever in the board, definitely that will continue to stretch the influence of bureaucracy in the management of the new companies. So what will now be the difference between the pre-PIA and the post-PIA if you still have those enormous powers, of government being, carried over to a new environment of privately owned business? So it is in place. It is not wrong for Mr. President to have initiated those things. I think we should rather appreciate his thoroughness in being able to, to figure out that aspect of it.
Okay, you're the Deputy Majority Leader, and of course you're representing people, and of course also has the former president of NUPENC, which actually have to do with lots or thousands of workers. How do you think this will actually affect workers, owing to the fact that there are reports that this might lead to the sale of refineries and a lot of workers might actually have to be laid off? How is this going to affect the private sector?
Well, obviously, the new changes that are initiated in the law are likely to bring about a lot of opportunities. However, the process of implementation will also lead to some shocks. New agencies will emerge. There's going to be an influx of foreign investments that will bring about employment opportunities in the entire industry, both the downstream, midstream, mainly midstream and upstream, actually downstream to some extent. However, because we're also going to have a situation where state-owned organizations will now be made private companies. Private companies will not want to carry the whole liability along. They want to grab the asset, the good things, and then when it comes to workforce, they may be seeing the whole weight as some form of liability and they want to prune down. And some will say, okay, they need new skills, they need new professionals and want to grab such professionals, and in the process may have to start thinking about laying off and all of that. Now, if that happens, definitely the professionals that they need will still come from this economy, will come from Nigerian population. So the new skills that will be required, if we do the right thing, yeah, even when the companies are privately owned, if you don't do the right thing and lay the right foundation for them to comply with the extant rules of the state, people might just be looking elsewhere for those new skills. But I think that we are prepared.
How are
But
you?
as in labor,
How prepared are you in terms of ensuring that there's that environment that would thrive for workers to ensure that they have decent work and we don't have lots of people leave the system?
yeah, I think we have done a lot in terms of providing the right legislative framework, for that to happen. We are also going to rely on very effective oversight of the industry to ensure that Nigerian workers are not shortchanged and Nigerian applicants are not discriminated against in the process of filling the vacancies that will arise as a result of the new changes.
Hopefully, we don't get to see a lot of protests moving forward when we get to that bridge, because you said it's a whole lot of process. And plus or minus, when do you envisage this process will kick off?
Well, I have not spoken with the leadership of the industry after the passage, but I think I read in the media that between now and 2014, NNPC will start selling shares, which means it will go fully, private. But even before then, a lot of business opportunity will start coming up, and then the whole of this process will involve the legislature playing their own role, using the oversight opportunity to ensure that those who are coming in are fresh, play their game in such a way that Nigerian workers will be protected. You know that people like us and Aminu Sulegoro and some other people who come from labor to this place, we are still here. We still have our labor spirit in us, and we are watching and also proactively, for that matter, to make sure that we don't allow such, unfair practices in this industry.
It's one thing for you to have that possibility of your job being protected. It's one thing for you to be qualified to own that seat. So I think right now the best thing is for people to upskill, ask questions, and probably be prepared. So of course you get what you deserve, maybe with the help of the union and the Federal House of Representatives.
Yeah, actually, I met with a couple of people from the oil and gas industry before the passage, and we tried to raise this. But the thinking among majority of people is that if you want to go private, if you want to go, fully professional, this kind of observation that Mr. President raised should be taken care of. They see the unions as organizations that will do so well, checkmating whatever boards are doing than being part of the board itself. But some of us don't see it that way because it's better to criticize from within because you have the right information. If you keep the workers out and have to struggle for information, sometimes they will take actions that can hurt the organization before they get the right information to act on. So when they are operating within and they're part of the decision-making processes, they can bring the concerns of the union to the notice of the leadership of those organizations before final decisions are made.
Casualization, outsourcing of workers actually still seems to be the order of the day. We have laws of the land. Some of the laws are actually some of the laws actually even encourage private owners or private companies to engage people for a long period of time to do a work that is supposed to be permanent in nature, but make it a contract work. In view of this privatization that will be happening in the sector, I see that privatization because you have a lot of private investors that will be coming in. Are there laws that you think will be put in place to ensure that workers are not just engaged on contract basis, but will become permanent staff?
What I've come to realize in the parliament is that the law being a more rigid instrument than policies. In the public sector, people believe that some of these issues that have to do with day-to-day running of organizations should be policy-based, but might derive, input from the position of law, right? So, for instance, where organizations are allowed to, it's difficult to say, don't do contract staffing at all. Yeah? But the only thing that you have to do is to say, okay, fine, if you must engage people on contract basis, do it the right way. I know that Nigerians are not afraid, to work as contract workers. Contract worker, for instance, so where I come from, in the oil and gas industry, the mainstream, if let's say Chevron engages Noble Drilling to drill a rig for them, the workers that are working on that Chevron platform, they are contract workers there, but they are staff of Noble Drilling. Noble Drilling in that case is a solid organization on its own that has its own policies. The only difference would be that there might be conditions that the major, we insist on since the workers are working on their platform, but they are not staff of that, company that own the job itself. So that situation, I think, is acceptable to workers in the industry. It's acceptable to unionists and the unions. But where a company that is doing its own job, we employ people through a contractor who hitherto had no knowledge about or had no competencies in managing that particular business just to satisfy whatever interest. And then the person's own job is just to act as a vendor, to bring in workers from the unemployed world, and give to an organization. In most cases, not even from the unemployment world rather. They they are given contract to act as the vendors, paying salaries to people who have been, some of them were already working in the companies, and then you're not bringing a new contractor and say, this is the person that will henceforth be your employer because he has a contract as a vendor to the company. Those are the ones that are actually so unacceptable to the unions and to Nigerian lawmakers. And those are the areas that we're going to focus on. Yes, if you have a service company providing services to a major company, the laws or policies, that obtain in that particular company should still apply to those people that are servicing other companies out there. Such a way that by the time they are negotiating from the beginning, they know that, yes, this is the salary that their workers are going to earn. It is not the business of the person you are providing services for, but you have to build your labor factor into the contract. When that is settled, the people will be happy working as noble worker or whatever the name of the company is, right? But the situation where a major employer decides to bring in a vendor, say, okay, fine, go and continue from today to the next, for the next 3 years, you are the one to pay the salary of these people. Then at the end of the month, they wait for that company to give them money before they will pay their workers. And then they will take their own cut or interest or whatever it is from that money before paying workers. That is what is not acceptable. And that is what we are still going to make sure that doesn't happen. So both the policy environment will have to get it right. The legislative angle also will have to be properly implemented to ensure that wrong practices are checkmated in the industry.
Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.